All right, everyone. Welcome. It's great to see you all. Good morning. Good morning. I'm just going to repeat this one more time. If you need interpretation in Cantonese, Mandarin, or Spanish, you can raise your hand and someone will come over with a headset for you. If you think in the middle of the presentation you'd like to listen in the language, you can always go over to the piano and get a headset. All right, well, welcome everyone to Civic Coffee. It's great to be at the Lake City Senior Center with all of you. My name is Emily Billow. I'm the Older Adult Program Manager at the Seattle Public Library. I co-sponsor these events with Age Friendly Seattle, so that's going to be Meg and Eldad running the tech and the headsets. It's great to be here today to talk about a very important topic called end-of-life planning. And we're joined today by three really great panelists from a few different places. And yeah, I guess we'll just get started, jump into it right away. I know there's a lot of content to cover today. So starting all the way on my right, we have Emily Tyson-Shu, Associate Attorney with Reed Longyear. So Emily is an Associate Attorney at Reed Longyear, where she focuses her practice on estate planning, probate, and trust administration. With nearly a decade of legal experience, she provides strategic counsel to individuals and families in the area of estate planning and probate, including complex estate planning, advanced trust structures, probate proceedings, and dispute resolution in estate matters. And don't worry, we're going to go over what all that means. I know that's a lot of words. She is fluent in Mandarin Chinese with a background in immigration law. She brings a culture of informed perspective to her practice and proudly serves a diverse client base. Her ability to communicate complex legal concepts in a clear and compassionate manner ensures that every client feels informed and supportive. As a parent of young children, Emily has a deep personal understanding of the importance of planning for the future. She is especially attuned to the concerns of family and caregivers and is committed to helping clients achieve peace of mind through careful, proactive planning. She also provides compassionate guidance to clients through navigating the probate process after the loss of a loved one. Outside of her legal work, I don't know what that was, but we'll keep going. Outside of her legal work, she is actively involved in her local community and remains dedicated to increasing access to equitable legal services for underserved populations. Thank you, Emily, for joining us. Is she private practice?
Yes.
Yes, she's from a private practice. Yeah. All right. And then next we have Kay. Kay Longhee, she's a consultant with an organization called Known Wishes. Kay's advocacy through advanced care planning world began with her career in healthcare and evolved through the death of her two terminally ill husbands. And finally, 25 years on the board of End of Life Washington. She now serves as a consultant with Known Wishes, meeting with individuals and groups of people to educate them on all aspects of preparing for death. Prior to retirement, Kay worked in various healthcare settings not as a clinician, but as a manager and director in clinics and hospitals. This experience provided a solid background in physician-patient relations and medical care delivery systems. Those experiences, coupled with the public's growing desire for autonomy regarding their death, fuels her work. Thank you, Kay. And last but not least, we have Rachel LeBlanc, and she's the Communications Director with People's Memorial Association, or what I'll refer to a lot of times as PMA. People's Memorial Association's Communication Director, Rachel LeBlanc, made it clear from day one, when she decided to go into death care in 2019, that her mission was to become a voice for the progressive side. Stepping into funeral directing at the Co-op Funeral Home of People's Memorial during the height of the COVID pandemic, her deep compassion for clients, families, and her commitment to care never wavered. Fun fact, she served as Washington State's very first alkaline hydrologist client in 2021. Rachel, 6 years of firsthand funeral home experience gives her insight into the nuances of the field now as an educator. Local to Western Washington, she still grasps the beauty of our local surroundings and escape to nature every chance she can. Awesome. So as you can see, we have a wide variety of expertise up on this panel. And this topic came from some questions that you all had here at the center around end-of-life planning, specifically around what wills are, what DPOA is, so an acronym that we'll go over, what trusts are. And so today I brought up some professionals that we thought could answer those questions. And maybe even some more things that maybe you hadn't thought about for end-of-life planning. And so first we'll start with Rachel. And what is People Memorial Association? What services do you offer for the community around end-of-life planning, and in what languages?
Yeah, thank you so much for having us, Emily and Lake City seniors. People's Memorial Association, we're a nonprofit based here in Washington. We started back in 1939 with the intention of expanding access to cremation. And in the decades since, Washington has become one of the top cremation rate states in the country. And People's Memorial has expanded into being a resource for education and resources for end-of-life planning. And we've also done a lot of advocacy work to help pass laws that have expanded options, as well as providing some protections for people engaging with funeral homes, which is pretty much everybody at some point, unfortunately. One of the biggest services that we provide to the public is our price survey. We conduct this every other year. We're actually doing it right now as we speak. With the help of volunteers, we contact every single funeral home in Washington State, which is about 250 plus funeral homes. We collect their price lists. Per one of the laws we helped pass back in 1984, the FDC funeral rule, a funeral home is required to provide you with their general price list if you approach them about their services. So we collect these general price lists, we compile them in to a accessible database on our website. So that way people can see. We also have it by county as well, so you can see your specific area. And it helps you with determining what funeral home is going to meet your budgetary needs. What languages? Thanks for help with Seattle Public Library. We have our forms, as you may have seen over at the table, translated into Chinese and Spanish. We've also done some educational programming in Mandarin, Cantonese, Spanish, and actually right now Vietnamese. And we have engaged with a service, so if you call us, we do have our phone number. Our motto is no questions unanswered. So if you don't get a chance to ask me something today, feel free to give us a call, and we've heard it all, so nothing's too left field. We do have translation service available, so just let us know, hey, can I have a different language than English? And we'll get a translator on the line for you.
Thank you so much, Rachel. I also wanted to mention that at the end of the panel, we will have time for some questions. So if you do have anything that you want to ask, please save that till the end and we'll get it answered. And if not, by me after the panel, we can have someone check in with you. All right. So Kay, kind of a similar question for you. What is Known Wishes, and what do you provide for the community? And what languages or communities do you currently work with?
Thank you, Emily. And I am so pleased to be here and meet you all and answer the questions you may have later on in the program. I represent an organization that's named Known Wishes. That's because we want every single one of you who has a wish about what is the best kind of medical care you want when you are ill and preparing for death, and what you want your loved ones to know about what's important to you. All of the people that work for Known Wishes, and there's 7 of us, have each had a very unhappy experience with a loved one who had a miserable dying experience. And we thought, it doesn't have to be like that. If the public just knew what they could do in advance to prepare and to write down the preferences they have about dying with dignity or dying with their religious beliefs intact or dying with the people they love. And so we formed an organization that does nothing but meet with people like you and tell them about what we have all learned in the process of being 77 years old and knowing what fate I have in front of me in terms of what kind of death I want. And we can share not only what's on our mind, but we share what we learned from our loved ones who passed away earlier. We unfortunately do not have any of our material translated in anything other than English. We're not happy about that, and down the road, our goal is to have the translation of all of our documents, which are available for free online on our website, so that everybody has the opportunity to express what their concept of a death with dignity is.
Thank you so much, Faye. And I also want to just mention, I know because this is something that we do partner on, but we do a longer class that is with all kinds of different communities, both at our branches, but also yesterday we were at an SHA house, the Seattle Housing Authority houses. We've been to the Greenwood Senior Center, lots of different places. So I know that you all, even though have just English right now, you do try to get out to lots of different communities and spaces. Awesome. And at the end of the table, Emily, it is so great to be joined for an attorney for this topic. I am just always so grateful when you say yes to opportunities. Having someone with the legal experience is always really valuable for end-of-life planning. And so when we're thinking about end-of-life planning, at what point might you involve an attorney, or when might you be involved in with someone?
Thank you, Emily. I'm also Emily. It's an honor to be here, and like Kay said, like Rachel said, to answer all of your questions and share a little bit about what we know and hopefully to be helpful to you. And the question is when an attorney will be involved in end-of-life attorney. That's a great question. End-of-life planning is, I believe, one of those areas where involving an attorney early could really make a significant difference. Most people would think that they only need to involve an attorney when there's a medical crisis or a serious diagnosis, but ideally, planning should start before that point. An attorney can help prepare core documents that will form the foundation of a solid estate and incapacity plan. Documents generally involve last will and testament, durable powers of attorney, health care directives, etc. And it goes on. Those documents are not only about what happened after death, but also about protecting you during life while you cannot make decisions for yourself. What I've been seeing is that people often come to us when they go through major life transitions. For example, getting married, having children, going through a divorce, or caring for aging parents. Some people come to us when they have complicated family dynamics. For example, maybe they have blended families, estranged relatives, or beneficiaries with special needs. So having those legal documents ready could really reduce the uncertainty and avoid conflict later on. And I would say there's also a practical side of timing. Waiting until someone who is seriously ill or losing capacity could really raise legal and emotional challenges. Because at that point, questions may arise, such as competency, undue influence, or whether this person truly has the capacity to sign legal documents. And we don't want that. We don't want that. So as you can see, planning is not only for wealthy people. I think that's a misnomer. Planning is for everyone in your individualized situation. So overall, I say the best time to involve an attorney for the end of life planning is before there's urgency. It works better when it's proactive rather than reactive. And it works better when people have the opportunity to make the thoughtful decisions when they are healthy and able to communicate their wishes clearly. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Emily. I think what I'm hearing, I think just from the first questions that we've been talking to folks, asking people about, was just how important this is to the plan, to avoid conflict, to leave a legacy, and that planning is for everyone. So everyone in this room. Like I said, today we have some resources on the back table, but now we're gonna kind of go into some programs that everyone offers that you all can attend. Although this is an hour-long session, we really can't go over everything in an hour. There's just too much. And so, Rachel, the next question is for you. You and I run an end-of-life planning class called Ducks in a Row. And I also just want to shout out to the CMAR group. You all have had it before. It was called El Final de la Vida. So I know a few of you at least went through the class. And it is a 3-part end-of-life planning series that covers funeral option, advanced care planning, and estate planning. And in that session, you personally cover the funeral options. And just knowing that there are a lot of cultural preferences, a lot of people from different backgrounds in this room, and funeral options may look a lot different for each of these communities. And it is a huge topic when talking about end-of-life planning, and maybe the one that seems most obvious to folks originally. From the funeral options perspective, what should folks consider when they are planning for this part?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you're asking about what services we provide, and education is absolutely one of our keys. I think I was telling Emily earlier, this year I'm looking at probably teaching about 30 classes, and Emily sometimes does our estate planning class too. So yeah, I think that one of the important things for people to consider when planning is what is important to you personally. I do hear a lot of people say, I don't really care, I'm gonna be dead, So that might mean just a simple direct cremation, no bells and whistles. Your family can gather and honor you afterwards if they want. Or, as Emily was saying, and I know Kay, you mentioned earlier with religious beliefs, maybe you're part of a religion that has guidelines on what should be done. So, really, it is just taking the time to consider what matters to you personally, what matters to your belief system, maybe take your family into consideration as well. You know, a lot of people do want to have a place for their relatives in the future to come visit, so maybe burial's more important to them. Another aspect that has been gaining, obviously budget is a big consideration. I talked about our price survey earlier. Also the ecological impact of death care is becoming more and more of a focus in our society. So that might be important to you too, especially as eco-friendlier options beyond cremation have been introduced and expanding on access to those. So really, yeah, just think about what you want. And one of the forms over there, I did see a lot of folks grabbed them, and I know that Known Wishes also has versions of this as well. Here in Washington, it's really easy to put into writing what you want to have happen. So one of the forms that's over there on the table says disposition authorization. Here in Washington, it's as simple as, and we have this formatted, you don't have to be a member of People's Memorial to use this. We just make it easy with having a formatted version for you. But you just simply state your name, which option you want, maybe leave some other instructions for your survivors, you know, who will be interfacing with the funeral home on your behalf. And then you just simply sign and date in front of a witness who also signs and dates, and that's legally binding here in Washington. You could get it notarized, but it's not required per state law. The main thing is your signature and date and the witness signature and date. And that witness should be someone impartial, just so there's no question among your immediate family, you know. So yeah, just really consider what is important to you, and yeah, and you mentioned it's a difficult conversation. I always say, at least just have the conversation once with your family, you know, your friends, whoever will be left in charge of planning your arrangements and working at the funeral home. And then everybody's on the same page. You don't have to have the conversation again, but at least have it once. You know, working as a funeral director, I can't tell you how many times I had people say, oh, we never talked about it. I don't really know what mom wanted. At least just have the conversation once, and then you're all on the same page. And put it in writing. It's even better.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Rachel. I like to talk about it. I think that's a big piece that we sometimes don't talk about when we're talking about end-of-life planning, but it is so big to let your family know, let your partner know, let your grandkids know. Make copies, yeah, exactly. Make copies and have them available so that people know what you want. And if you change what you want, which is more than acceptable, you can change what you want as many times as you want, but just make sure that everyone has those updated forms. Emily, I'm gonna really quick throw a question to you, which is, so all of these forms that we're giving you are in various language, whether it's Spanish, Chinese, English. And I know this has come up in some of our other classes, but if someone does have a Chinese, a document that's in Chinese, and then goes to a funeral home that only speaks English, how would that work? And is it more of the family members knowing, or is it how does that kind of process work with multiple documents in multiple languages?
Thank you, Emily. That's a great question. I would say, generally speaking, we first should look into whether this document is validly executed. Because certain legal documents come with certain signing requirements. For the disposition of remains that Rachel mentioned about, if you want it to be valid in the state of Washington, it needs to be signed by you and witnessed by at least one competent witness. So assuming that all works out, I think it comes to the facilitation part. And as you can imagine that English is the primary language here, And essentially, my recommendation would be for any non-English documents ideally will be translated by the certified translator into English version, which will make things move over much, much smoothly. And remember what we're doing here, preparing those forms and documents, the primary goal is to make sure our loved one, they have an easier way of handling things. So I would say if your documents are prepared in a different language, you are always encouraged, recommended to translate it into English.
Thank you for that, Emily. I know that that part can get a little confusing for folks, which languages need to be in. And I really do think making sure your family knows what your wishes are, and then a lot of times maybe they might speak more than one language as well, so that sometimes can be helpful to relay what your wishes are to maybe the funeral home or whoever you're working with down the road. But yeah, the legality of it can be a little different. Awesome, thank you. And Kay, next question I have for you, and I know I've talked just a bit briefly about our end-of-life planning classes. Known Wishes has 3 different sessions. One is called Secrets of Dying Well, one is End-of-Life Planning with Dementia, and the other one is End-of-Life Planning with Ill or Reluctant Loved Ones. And so those 3 sessions do happen both virtually and at libraries. And I guess with the question that we have for today is that we did talk about the disposition authorization form, but in the back we also have a thick packet that you all go over for your classes. Can you briefly describe what a Known Wishes classes is and kind of what you would walk through with this packet, and if there are any important sections that you want to highlight today?
Thank you, Emily. We do have a packet. It's this thick. We don't want to put people off by showing them all these pieces of paper that can feel intimidating to complete. You have heard Rachel talk about planning for death, and you have heard Emily talk about the documents that are important you complete. We at Known Wishes offer a class that goes over a number of the things we want you to think about. Not only talking to your family, but talking to your doctor. It is very important that your doctor understand why you think the way you think about dying. The doctor cannot read your mind. So the more you can articulate to your doctor what is important to you in terms of your dying process, the better. So the very difficult part about all of this is deciding what is important to me about my dying process. If you can feel comfortable with what's important to you, then you will be able to proceed and talk confidently to your family and talk to your doctor. For example, my first husband had lung cancer, and he was a doctor, so he knew his prognosis that there was no cure. So he decided on getting just comfort care over the next several months as he slowly died. And he wanted me and his other doctor friends to help him die when he reached the point where he did not want to live anymore. And that was when he couldn't walk. And I said, wait a minute. you know, there's wheelchairs and there's crutches and there's all kinds of automatic things now where you don't have to walk. You can have a good life. And then he reminded me that as a very little boy, he had polio. And he was hospitalized for months, and then he was at home in bed for years. And by the time he could get up and go to school, none of the other kids would play with him because he had a limp and because he was so different than the other kids. So naturally, my husband thought, I don't want to go through that trauma again of not being able to get around and walk. So that was one of his values. But you know what, everybody? You can change your values as time goes on. One day the television did not work at our house, and he was very upset. And this was before you could get on the internet and buy a TV and have it delivered to the house. So he asked me for a wheelchair so he could go to the store and buy a TV. And I got him a wheelchair. And he lived in that wheelchair for 3 more months. That was his value of being able to walk. Another one is shortening the dying process rather than prolonging it if I have a terminal illness. Don't make me go through another round of chemotherapy. I don't want it. I just want to die naturally. That's how some people feel. So your ability to articulate to your doctor and to your family what's important to you. Maybe it's to be sure that religious values and traditions are followed, that there is a burial within a certain period of time. Tell your doctor that. And you will be able to approach the idea of dying with a sense of confidence and contentment that you will die the way you want to. And yes, we have all the forms, and we encourage you to read those forms and complete them. And we encourage you to tell everybody you know about the form so that everybody can stand up and talk to the doctors or their friends about what you want. And then we ask you to think about what your legacy is. How do I want to be remembered after I'm buried and gone? And that is a very important thing that you can start arranging in advance. So these are some of the topics we go over when we meet, and we can meet with individuals. I've met with lots of families, or we often meet in groups like this. So don't hesitate getting in touch with us. Thank you.
What was your name again?
My name is Kay.
Her name is Kay Longhee, and on the Known Wishes documents, there's an email, and if you'd like to, reach out, PMA also has their numbers and emails on things, and then Emily also has cards over there too. So all of our panelists have their contact information available today. However,
That one document they ran out of.
they ran out of, okay. There's those packets, the Known Wishes packets. There's 2 ways you can get them. If you just go to knownwishes.com, they are there. And I can also get Mariah the file, and she can print some more for the center too.
If you go to our website, look along the top for the resources and click on that, and there's a whole long list of resources that you can download yourself or read online.
Thank you so much, Kay. So what Rachel and Kay have talked a bit about, I feel like, are mostly going to be the documents that you need potentially while still alive. So that's going to be, we talked about the PULSE, the Portable Order for Life-Sustaining Treatment. We talked about durable power of attorney for finance and healthcare. That's kind of deciding what happens to you if you were in the hospital and couldn't make those decisions for yourself. We've covered a little bit, but not so much on something called the Dementia Directive. That's if you have dementia and what kind of care or treatment you would like to have. Those all are available on the Known Wishes site, as well as another great resource for those specific documents is going to be End of Life Washington. So those are really documents that you use mostly when you're alive to kind of direct what kind of care you need. But the next document that we're going to talk about is what happens after you've passed and what kind of happens to after that process. We talked a little bit about disposition of body, disposition operation form, which is part of that, as well as the vital statistics forms. We may have mentioned a little bit about that with there. But the next question is something that you guys specifically asked, which is what is the difference between a will and a trust? So that's kind of the next piece that we're going to talk about. And for Emily, the lawyer here, could you explain a little bit more about both a will and a trust, and why someone might choose one or the other?
Thank you, Emily. That's an excellent question, and given the shortage of time, I'll explain this a little bit. So both, I want to make one clarification that there are many trusts out there, and they serve different purposes, and trusts can be lifetime. So, but oftentimes people also use trust for the decisions and disposition of assets after passing. But both will and trust are part of the estate planning tools, and the most common tool for trust, you may know, is called revocable living trust. So oftentimes people compare those two documents, a will versus revocable living trust. But I just want to make it clear that there are many different kinds of trusts out there, not just revocable living trust. So both will and revocable living trust, they have similarity, but they also work differently, serving different purposes. A will is, you may know, a legal document that states your wishes, how you would like your assets to be distributed upon death, and you also get to nominate the individuals or companies, so-called professional fiduciaries, to act in those fiduciary roles to administer your estate. So, for example, you have the control to say who I want to name to handle my estate in the personal representative capacity. And if you have younger children, you get to nominate the guardian in the event a guardian is required to act, in those legal fiduciary role for the benefit of your minor children. And if you would like to, for example, set up a testamentary trust, meaning a trust would become effective created upon death. If you want to set up such a trust for the benefit of your minor children after your passing, then you also get to name the trustee, the person managing the trust assets for the benefit of your beneficiaries. So you have certain control of certainty to know who will be helping you, taking care of all these things when you're not going to be there overseeing them. And additionally, as we know that another major goal of the will is that you get to specify who your beneficiaries are. So you can say where my assets should go to and how to be distributed to them, etc. On the other hand, a revocable living trust is somewhat a legal arrangement where assets are held by a trustee for the benefit of the beneficiary. So by its name, revocable living trust, such a trust can be created during your lifetime. And when this trust is created, you as a trustee, oftentimes will act as a you as a truster, meaning the person who creates this trust, will also act as a trustee, meaning the person managing the trust assets yourself. And since this is a revocable living trust, you create such a trust, so oftentimes you will be the beneficiary as well. So the trust assets can only be used for your benefit. And this structure is really, really beneficial in the event when you're incapacitated, because by the time your named successor trustee can immediately take over the management of the trust assets and utilize the trust assets for your benefit while you're alive, but potentially incapacitated. So someone's out there readily available, named by you, to take over and care for you. And similarly, similar to the will, in the revocable living trust, we can specify our beneficiaries to receive our estate, our assets upon our passing. So same thing, we will specify who the beneficiaries are and how they will be receiving our assets, etc. One major difference between a will and a revocable living trust is that when you have a will becomes effective upon death. And usually, when you have a will, probate is necessary for your estate to be administered. And for people who would rather avoid will, revocable living trust is often a common tool for people to utilize. Because the idea is, if you create this revocable living trust and you properly titled all the applicable assets to the trust name, then anything under the trust name won't go through probate, and they will bypass probate so as to be distributed to your beneficiaries. So like I said, as you can see, they have similarities, but they also serve different purposes. So if you're a person who feels strongly about avoiding probate, or who would like to increase certain level of privacy, so maybe a revocable living trust will be an ideal tool for you. But they all come with pros and cons. Like I said, when you have a revocable living trust, then there's a second step of retitling your assets. So there will be additional steps that we need to take. It just means we need to, be mindful that there are additional steps we need to take, etc. Thank you.
I want to add one thing. On the advanced directive documents that you'll be asked to fulfill, which is just a form to write down what kind of medical care you want, that's all it is. It asks you to name somebody who can speak for you on your behalf if you have lost your cognizant capabilities, or if you are unconscious. That person is called a durable power of attorney for healthcare. So my sister is going to talk to the doctors if I can't. And I've given her permission to do that. That is a durable power of attorney for healthcare. My sister's authority to speak for me ends the minute I die. All the documents that Emily just talked about usually have somebody in charge, an executive, a individual who will speak for you about your finances, about your will, about your trusts. Those are completely different people than the people who talk to you about your health care. Just making that clear.
Oh, now now I have an add-on to the add-on, which a lot of people don't know this, but power of attorney for medical care actually ends at death. And so a lot of times people don't know that, and the power of attorney calls the funeral home, and we have to say, we're sorry, but per Washington state law, we actually need to engage with who the state considers your next of kin. And in some cases, people don't want who the state determines their next of kin to be involved in their life or in their death. So one of the forms that we have on the table that I saw some of you grab is called a designated agent for funeral arrangements. That basically serves here in Washington state as the power of attorney, but for after death. So say in Kay's example of the sister being the medical power of attorney, you may want to also designate that sister as your designated agent so she can continue on with overseeing your care even after death. So, yeah.
Thank you for talking about all those documents. I do feel like we need a flow chart or something to kind of show how the different documents work, because it does get very confusing very quickly. I know I'm seeing a little bit of deer in the headlights for a few folks, and that is okay. It does get very confusing. I have been holding sessions like this for over 5 years now, and I still don't know all the ins and outs of all these documents, and never will, I don't think, to be honest.
That's why I have Emily come talk.
This is why I have the great, this great panel. I wanted to open it up for some questions. Does anyone have a question that they'd like to ask? Do you have a question?
How different is it from guardianship and power of attorney?
Yeah, so the question was, how different is power of attorney versus guardianship?
Do you want to take that one?
In a nutshell, there are different kinds of guardianship, and the law was changed years ago that there's a distinction between guardians and conservators, and they're all court-appointed fiduciaries. So a guardian nowadays, under the legal context, will be strictly meaning someone who will be able to, a court-appointed fiduciary, caring for the person who's incapacitated and unable to make decisions on their own, but caring for the person. So only for the legal decisions, care, etc. And there's a different role called conservator, will be the court-appointed fiduciary, caring for this person, incapacitated person's, assets related items. Power of attorney is agent. It are the people who are named by you in a legally executed document while you have the capacity to execute such documents.
So they're paying your bill, they're paying the bills for you. No?
What do you mean paying the
Power of
bills for
attorney
me?
is authorized to,
Yeah, if you're talking about hiring an attorney, creating legal documents, yes, there are legal fees that may need to be paid, because attorneys providing
I'm
services.
saying the financial power of attorney would be paying your bills when you're incapable of.
like paying the electric bill and the phone
Yes.
bill.
Paying those bills, I see. Yes, so there are two general kinds of power of attorney. One is financial, one is healthcare. I think like Kay and Rachel mentioned earlier. There are different powers. You can name different people acting in the fiduciary roles. You can name the same people for both roles. You can name different people. But yes, if you're talking about financial power of attorney, those agents will help you handle all the financially related items, so long as you grant the power clearly in those
So the
documents.
guardian's not doing that then?
Guardians, it depends. So if you're, for example, if you're capable, if you have a validly executed document, yes, agent can help you out. But if the situation arises to the point that where the court should intervene and appoint a guardian, then oftentimes it depends on the court's decision. The courts may say, okay, then let's go with the guardian only. But sometimes the power attorney agent may stay on, so it really depends on the court's decision.
So it sounds when you say the court, that sounds like a person can't designate person proactively if they get to that point then, because that's
If you could just repeat the question.
in lieu of the court.
Kids can't hear him talking.
Okay.
Anyway, that's all right, we can talk later.
Okay, sounds good. Do we have any other questions? What, back here?
Quiero aclarar, si bien es cierto, podemos nosotros firmar la autorización en el idioma que tenemos, pero necesita traducción. Entonces, es mejor firmar la autorización en inglés.
I know. I just laughed at myself inside. So the question is there a way that I would be able to do these documents in Spanish and sign them, but have somebody that legally can translate them into English so that they are considered legal and can be used?
Is that
I
question for
would
me?
think so, so long as he signs both versions.
Okay.
With the, and whatever witness signatures and stuff are required, so long as they're on both versions.
I think I need definition what documents we're talking about.
Yeah.
Okay, so the panelists have asked a few more questions. Essentially, it kind of depends on the document, but having the English version does feel the most appropriate. But if you have them in Spanish and then get them translated, it sounds like that would probably be best, and have both copies available.
Can I
Yeah.
add something? If we're talking about a will, so for example, we do have a lot of international cases, right, where people probably coming from different countries and they prepare their wills in a different country in their own language, but the will was executed validly under the local law. And under Washington State, in this situation, as long as it's complying with the local law, foreign law, and if you can produce evidence to prove that, generally speaking, the court would admit such foreign will. But this will, yes, it need to be translated into in English, otherwise the court wouldn't be able to understand the content of the document. And that would be a little bit of sharing about the will specifically.
I think one of the more important things with all of these documents is that your family knows what they say. So whether they're on English or Spanish, a lot of what we talked about today is really just the people around you knowing what you want and knowing where those documents are. And then if, say the court needs to have it and needs to utilize that document, they can get it translated essentially, or you would get it professionally translated at that point. But I think really in the first steps, even if it is in Spanish, just making sure that it is done and that it is executed properly. So signed or witnessed, notarized, whatever needs to happen with the specific document, and that everyone in your family knows about those documents.
Yeah, I want to raise a question. I want to donate my body after I pass away.
Yeah.
For medical research.
Yes.
And then what's the procedure?
Yeah.
And then after they finish medical research, what about that? That's over.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
So another audience question we have is someone would like to donate their body to science. What do they do? How do they get on those lists? And then what happens after the body has been used? Do we get to know what research happened with it? And then kind of what happens after that?
Yeah, great question. So a great resource here in Washington State is called Life Center Northwest. They are going to be a great resource for information about body and organ donation. And so yeah, I would start there for information about what's available. One thing that people don't realize is even if you put on your license that you're an organ donor, no one's going through your purse when you're at the hospital and saying, oh, she's an organ donor. They're gonna approach your family if you're a candidate and ask your family, hey, are they an organ donor? Are you interested in this? There are certainly programs, like the University of Washington has some. The main thing, though, is just to be aware that while there's different limitations and actually less limitations than you would think, a lot of those programs, because people are so interested in them, often will not have a need. So a big thing I would say, besides looking at Life Center Northwest or other programs, do the research ahead of time rather than when you're in the midst of the dying process. Know what they're going to be using your organs or bodies for, because unfortunately there are a lot of for-profit players out there that are not necessarily going to be using you in a way that you may consider dignified. So just be careful of, are you doing it through like a school, through the university, or are you going, are you potentially engaging with a for-profit company? So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you for that question. All right, it is about time for us.
Okay, you wanna, yeah.
And just real quick, each of those different programs out there, as far as what would happen to your body after they've done the procurement, really depends. Some programs will provide cremation and provide your survivors with your cremated remains back. And some of them, will take, like say, if you do a cornea, they'll just take, the parts of your eyes that they're gonna use, and then your family proceeds with engaging with arrangements with the funeral home. So really it depends on which program you go through.
All right, okay, so we do need to wrap up. It is a little after 11. I do want to do one final takeaway from all of our panelists, so maybe give me one sentence or so. So we've talked about so many things today, so many documents, so many ways that you can plan ahead. What is the first step, and kind of what advice would you give someone?
I think attending this panel is a great first step. You're out here gathering research, gathering information. I think that's a perfect first step.
I would agree with Rachel. It's very hard to just look on the internet and start reading, because you need a frame of reference. And a group listen like this can be enormously helpful. So I would ask you to encourage your friends to do that.
I certainly veto that, and I will also encourage everybody to use this opportunity to understand yourself better. Think about what you like, think about what you want, think about what assets you actually have. I think that would be a very, very important first step.
Awesome.
All right, and last, I just want to wrap up with some resources. So we do have the table over there with all of the documents that we talked about today. People's Memorial Association is a great place to reach out, as well as Known Wishes. And then, like I said, Emily does have some cards over there if you'd like to chat with her later, too. The Seattle Public Library does hold monthly end-of-life planning workshops. And then we can eventually host a Ducks in a Row series again with this community if it is something that you guys want. Like we said, we have done it in Chinese and Spanish already. So either talk to Mariah or another staff member. We can potentially get that going maybe next year. And with that, thank you all for attending, and thank you Lake City Seniors for hosting us. And I appreciate you all and just give you all kudos for coming today and wanting to learn more. And I hope you all have learned something today, so thank you all. Have a great day.